Did you get a little workshopping done, a little ed-surging done, a little networking done? See, a few of you got a little drinking done, right? These should be some good questions that come at us. That's all right. I've been to school board meetings. I can take it. I taught middle school English, and there are some days where I think there is nothing about middle school. I see you sitting late. That prepared me for this job. And there are most days where I think everything about teaching middle school prepared me for this job. Absolutely. So we know, and you saw from the intro tape, that teachers across the nation are coming together to find new ways to take our profession back, to innovate and to create in our classrooms, and to find new ways to help students succeed. We're here tonight to encourage our debate and discussion about the best ways to do this. You have the knowledge, and we need to hear from you. As you heard this morning, Randy asked me to lead a task force on professionalism. Our task force began with 3 questions. What are the words that come to mind when you feel treated like a professional on your job? What are the barriers that you experience that keep you from feeling that way? And how have you overcome some of those barriers? We've taken those questions across the country in listening sessions, and we're using the feedback to shape the new standards for our profession so that we can stand up and speak out for what we need, what our communities need, and what our students and their families need. One of the things I've learned from starting this work on the task force, like I said this morning, is that we are not just a union of professionals. We are a union of leaders, and leaders with ideas. We are the ones who can make the change we want to see in our classrooms. So how do we do this? We set up listening sessions with members to hear from as many of you as possible. We need to embrace the fact that we, as a union, set the standard for our profession. That is the way it should be. The onus and responsibility is on us to stand up and speak out for what we need, what our communities need, and what our students need. So we're here tonight to really get that process moving. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then I'd like you to come to the mics to share some answers you have, that you have in your locals, that you have in your school building. Maybe it's an idea you had just today based on a fabulous workshop or a fabulous conversation with a fellow teacher leader. So here are the questions I want you to think on, and we want to hear from you about. What are you doing in your schools that you'd like to share that help your students succeed? How have you addressed any barriers to doing that work that you have encountered? How can we, as a national union, support your state or local efforts to remove those barriers so that we're doing this work together? I'll give you those questions. I'll ask you to go to either mic in the aisle, and who wants to kick this off?
Come on,
Just
people.
run down and go to the for sure.
Oh, awesome.
Can we use the
Want me
mic
to
up
come
here?
over to this mic?
Awesome.
Yay. Absolutely. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Shannon Jacks. I am from St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm a member of SPFT. I am a proud member of SPFT, let's be honest. For me, I'm a social person. I love going out and talking to people. Like, that's not a big deal for me. But to push people to talk about things that they're not actually comfortable about, it's not comfortable for me. So what we've done in our union, which I would love to see like us perpetuate and to foster with other unions and even do more of, is that we've done some trainings. We're like, here's what the members might say to you. Here's a question you can say back. Here's something you can respond to them with. So we kind of have like a cheat sheet. So I went out and did a membership drive for members. Actually, they weren't members, people that were Fair Share members, and went out and said, hey, you're not a member of our union. Do you want to be? What's your problem? Like, what is your, what? Let's rephrase that. What's your problem? I didn't say that. I didn't say what's your problem, but I did say, what questions do you have about the union? How can I help answer those questions? And we had a great response. We have so many more new members that have joined just from us going out and asking them, what questions do you have? How can I help you? Here I am. I'm a member of the union. I'm a member of your executive board. But I think it's important, like what I love about SPFT is that they gave us some questions to ask. They gave us some responses to give. It's just a great jumping off point.
Cool. Thank you. All right. And I did not plant that, but that's awesome.
Okay, there has to be questions in this room.
That's right.
So these are about, look, we, the three of us, do this all the time. When we spend any time, when we leave Washington, which all of us love to do, particularly on these hot, steamy nights, and we just go into schools and go into union halls and things like that. But this is really the opportunity. Any question anybody wants to ask. We want to do the first few minutes on professionalism and education. We want to do the second 15 minutes on issues like of politics and racial justice. And the last few minutes, we want to actually do on the issues of, on the membership resolution that we just passed. So, I'm ordering you to ask questions.
Get a picture of me with my mouth open. That's great. So I came up here to answer one of your questions. The second one, what kind of barriers have you come up against? In our district, when testing, there's such a push on testing, every now and then, and it's not really predictable, our coaches, our Common Core coaches, will be given lesson plans, and they are handed to us, and we are told to teach them. And we have no input, no say on it. And so, not this past year, but the year previous to that, I was given a curriculum to deliver to my students that I did not feel would help them, because I already knew what they were deficient in, I already knew what their strengths were, and I had a pretty good idea about how to address those. However, I wasn't given the ability to, or the empowerment to do so. And I will stand here and willingly admit that what I did to overcome that barrier was play the horse and pony show when they were in my room. And you do it. And to instead just continue to deliver instruction that I felt that they needed to get. And I'm proud to say that our union has fought against that and has really worked hard to make sure that things like that don't continue to happen. But that's something that the tests cause this kind of panic in our districts, because that's our test scores and that's our state report card. And it's unfortunate, and it's kind of antithetic to what they say. There is no cookie cutter solution, yet then they hand you a cookie cutter plan and ask you to deliver it to every single student and think that it's the magic solution. So that is what I did to overcome barriers.
Awesome. Well, and it's shrink wrapped too, right? Yeah, it's only official when it comes to you shrink wrapped. Yeah. So I just want to ask a quick question, because you raise a couple professionalism issues that I think we need to address. And one is intellectual property, your intellectual property, right? Not copyrighted intellectual property. And the other is academic freedom. And there are huge battles about academic freedom happening everywhere, from banning ethnic studies curriculum, ridiculous, right? And to your point, where they are handing off material and they are teacher-proofing lessons. And so I want to ask, are there any members in here who have been part of bargaining teams or part of locals where you have negotiated language around protecting the integrity of academic freedom or your intellectual property? All right, we've got a few of you. Excellent, yeah. Because I do think, again, one of the next frontiers of our professionalism as things expand is actually having avenues for teachers to share our work with integrity, as well as protect the work we want to do in our classrooms for our students with some integrity as well. So I really appreciate hearing about your conscientious objection in your classroom, clandestine as it may have been.
Our union did a really great job supporting that.
Right.
That's fantastic.
Our union did a really good job supporting our teachers, and I feel like that is why it didn't happen this year. Because of course we had the same class system, but it didn't happen. And that was a sense of freedom that I got back, and the empowerment that we received back to do what we know we need to do for our kids.
Thank you.
I think the strategy, Cincinnati, right?
That's right.
Okay. We negotiated a long time ago something called Article 8 in that little white book I talked about on Monday.
Who's sitting there?
By the way, do you know when we negotiated the provision I used on Monday? Any guess?
We're close.
What? 2005. Somebody today said to me, was it 1960? I said,
That person was escorted from the building.
no.
No.
But this notion of, instead of it being the individual teacher, who you know will then get really killed, right?
Right.
What Article 8 did in the UFT contract was it made it a union activity to challenge the notion of a curriculum and a different kind of curriculum. But even without the contract provision, what Cincinnati just did in terms of saying, what you've given us, like I'm looking at some of the New Yorkers, like on the Engage New York website, yeah, has nothing to do with what my kids need, even in implementation of the, I won't even say it. And
Right.
so, but if you make it, as Mary Catherine and the Cincinnati folks were just saying, if you make it a union activity, then they can't pin any particular teacher. It becomes a union activity. And that's what we were talking about in terms of using our voice. And thank you and props to Cincinnati for doing that.
Cool. Should we go over to this mic?
Hello. So I am not as dynamic as the young lady who spoke before me. Amazing. My name is Jennifer, and I'm from New Haven. And I have to just start by saying one of the things that I was confronted with was this year, as I was telling a few people, I am a literacy instructional coach. And it means that I get into classrooms and help teach teachers how to teach reading from kindergarten through 8th grade. And with that, I had a principal, who shall remain nameless, try to get me to tell on
Oh, yeah.
the teachers. So the way that I was able to speak out and speak my voice matter was by making sure that they recognize that, no, what I actually do is I went in and I modeled this, I did this in the class, I did that. You can know everything I did, but you won't know what to expect from my teachers, because they are my teachers who teach my kids. And if it means I must support them, then that's what it means. So that's my very small piece that rivals, like, you're great. So my question to the panel is this. what do you intend on doing that will continue to support our locals who are trying to become amazing and great? How do you want to continue to push them along to do that? So that is my question, the question I pose to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. Oh, fantastic question. Great question. Well, and first, I do have to say, Jennifer from New Haven, you are an incredibly articulate person. So I want to thank you for using your teacher voice at the microphone. And how many other people have read the story going around Facebook about women who apologize for the way we talk? Anyone? Yeah. So Jennifer from New Haven, own it, because that was awesome. So I think that's a fabulous question. How do we grow unions that are amazing? Okay, unions that know how to meet the members of our students and our members and families all at the same time, and unions that invest in a profession that just continues to grow and doesn't stagnate. I think that's a fabulous question. And I think there are a couple things that we continue to commit to doing, and I am open to anything you want to add to this. So first of all, I think pulling people together to share ideas and share stories is incredibly critical. So the opportunities like Teach are one thing we must continue to do. And because this is where, you know, someone from St. Paul gets a great idea from New Haven, and next thing you know, it's in our contract, right? And then someone hears about the pro schools at UFT, and who knows where that goes 18 months from now, for example. And so we have to continue to do this. In fact, Randy was actually talking about moving forward an idea of creating regional leadership meetings so that, you know, for some of you it's really convenient to come to Washington, D.C., but not for everyone, right? Where if it was in a regional area, and it might be a little easier to get to, and it could also then be a little more intimate, where we continue to share ideas. I think one of the things perennially we've experienced in large and small ways, both as a union and as classroom teachers, is that when we are treated like we're siloed, right? When we're told to just, you know, close your door and do your work, you know, when I want your opinion, I'll tell you what it is, you know, those sorts of things, then, you know, we don't grow to be who we could be. But when we're exposed to each other's ideas, when we have the chance to share and support each other, then we are going to be those amazing unions. So I actually think capitalizing on Randy's idea of regional meetings, so that we can come together in a more intimate setting, and then we're closer to each other where we want to support each other, as well as sharing out these big ideas when things work. So for example, when we did the survey with the bats and we shared that out and we did the petition, and then suddenly people started looking at it and saying, well, wait a minute, you could just turn these questions around and turn it into contract language. Well, yes, absolutely you could. And so like taking that, then the people who are going to experiment with that and amplifying it so that everyone can take advantage of what someone else tried, I think it will be incredibly important. So I think committing to pulling us together face to face, and then as, you know, as often as we can virtually as well. Thanks for your question. Want to go to this mic?
I certainly hope that you do the regional piece. My name is Donna Lashes. I'm from Boston, because in Boston we do have regional reps, and I think it's really been helpful for our city to have regional meetings where we can talk from our own union with each other. So I would like that you all continue to think about doing that.
Thank you. Yeah.
My question is, in Boston, there's this whole movement to have all teachers have 3 different certs to teach special ed, ELL, and regular ed students by their grade level. And one person in the classroom has to be this highly qualified person to be able to do all of that. It's great, but you have so many kids in front of you. Everybody should be highly qualified, but you can't do the specific kind of teaching you need to do to support kids to bring them up where they need to be if you're the sole person in that classroom doing it. And there is specific instruction that kids need that people get specialized in to be able to support them. Mm-hmm. And so my question to you is, how do you help us back in Boston? I mean, some people have been laid off for that. We've fought and got them back on. But it's not just in Boston, but I think it's also statewide that some of this is happening. So how can you help us to ensure that we have qualified teachers in the classroom, but that we don't go with the model of the one be-all to meet the needs of all students, because it's just not enough time in the day to be able to service children in that kind of manner, particularly if you have to service students with particular needs like that. And I'm from a full inclusion classroom, where we have special ed and ELL students and regular ed kids in the same setting.
Great. Thanks so much for your question. So let me jump in, and then if you have a thought too. So it sounds like, did I hear that there's a state mandate that these licensure conditions exist for all students, and one of the barriers is the ability to get the licenses, or the ability to meet the needs of students because there's... Okay.
State mandate,
Okay.
but the district is pushing towards that. So the state does not mandate. There's language out there that can be interpreted that way, and that's the way this district is trying to interpret it.
Right. Okay. So you've got a district who's moving in this direction. You feel it's not sustainable. These are not goals that can be reached, nor are they that feasible to meet the needs of your students. So, I mean, the first thing I think we'd love to do with you is diagnose all the different directions we can start breaking down that barrier. So one might be getting together with students and their families in these situations and ask actually what the learning conditions are that they feel they need and deserve, and then start building a coalition of voices around that. The second may very well be political, because if the district is doing this with the dispensation of your school board, then there may be some attention paid to your school board and the autonomy they're giving to teachers, or at this point, perhaps, the autonomy they're not. So I would love to sit down with you and break down what the different pieces of that barrier are, and then work on them with you. So if there's that community component, and if there's a political component, and then if there's a professionalism component to that as well, where you actually have, as professionals, you have your own ideas of the qualifications of someone who deserves to stand in front of Boston kids. And then promoting that as the alternative. So, Randy will encourage all of us to not only fight back, but fight forward. And so a piece of breaking down what the pieces of that barrier are is, here's how we're gonna fight back, right? We're gonna sit down with students and their families about the conditions they actually think they believe they deserve. And here's how we're gonna fight forward. We're professionals who have an idea of the sort of qualifications it takes to get the keys to your own classroom in Boston, and we're gonna promote that list of professionalism qualities as a counter to what the district seems to have as a one-size-fits-all model.
And
I think let's do we just got a note saying next section, but let's just do the last 3 questions here. See how quickly, like 20 minutes goes flying? But I think underlying any of these professional issues is this. And I saw this when the first iteration of standards came in. They wanted to make teachers seen and not heard. So tell us what to do, and tell us how to do it. And then if we actually just said anything, oh no, you don't really know what you're talking about. And so what I think Mary Catherine is saying, and this goes for not just, I mean, really, how can you actually be the special ed expertise, the ELL expertise, and the high poverty expertise, and also a general ed teacher? I mean, it's just setting up for failure. That's all it is, right? So the key becomes, how do we engage our bosses into a real conversation so that they don't feel it's convenient to set us up for failure, and then they immediately say, I did my job, I told them what to do. So that's part of why we started the Teacher Leader Program, because it then engages in a way. And sometimes the engagement, you okay? Sometimes the engagement has to be outside, and sometimes the engagement can be in a labor management committee. But the key here is we have to force the engagement, not how they see the world, how they want it to be, but how the world really is. And then force them to actually give us the tools and conditions we need to do our jobs. In a situation like that, I would also take the little antic to say, okay, why don't you actually show me how to do all of this? Come on into my classroom.
That is one of
and
my
show
favorite
me how to do it.
strategies.
Okay, and then I'm going to follow your lesson plan with a smile.
Awesome.
Smile, sorry. I meant it as a smile.
That is absolutely one of my favorite tactics so much.
Lois Lofton Donover, and that is one of my favorite tactics. I always told administration, show me, show me. And I didn't have to worry about them coming back in.
Nice.
I was especially a teacher, so it made a difference. I am from the Detroit Federation of Teachers, and I am the former Secretary-Treasurer of AFT Michigan. My concern is that I am extremely politically active. I volunteer for any education roundtable, but I am finding that I am the single teacher voice. And because of my involvement with the union, it gets discounted. What I would like to get from the national is some strategies that we could offer our teachers and professional staff to help shape in Lansing, our state capital, the education platform. Our concerns. When they hear from Lois, I've been on every committee in the state, so it's just Lois. But if they could hear from that basic classroom teacher, I don't know what incentives we can offer, but we need to offer something so they will start seeing that their voice counts. And that's what I would like. That's my question.
Well, that question is trying to end the second session that I'm going to come up, but I'm going to try to answer it now for you.
Loretta.
Basically, we need to set up speaker bureaus within our union to have them to go out into the community and community engagement, carrying the issues. These are classroom teachers, these are secretaries, these are paraprofessionals, they can be cafeteria workers, but when they go out into the community and carry that voice, it matters. Like you said, you're known only as the union person when they see average members coming out. It's different, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference also to you. As you well know, AFT has started community engagement out of our Civil and Human Rights Department. We have 5 organizers, community organizers in the regions, in our regions now, working with every local state fed to set up community engagement. And that's really what you're talking about right now. Political community engagement clout and understanding the issues. Now see, that's a two-way street. You just can't go out there with the educational issues. You also got to accept the community issues. And you have to get involved in the community issues. That's what's the key, and that's what's important to the community to understand when you understand their issues as well as taking your issues out there.
And I can add one other thing, and this is something we as a national are happy to help support any of this. And at the same time, sometimes the solution is simple as changing the turf you meet on. So very often, we as teachers, we're incredibly accommodating, and we're gonna go to the State House, right? And we're gonna meet them in their office, maybe with their mahogany desk and their plush carpet, and their person who makes copies for them and everything else, and instead change up the turf and say, we'd like you to come to our school. In fact, would you come at a time when I'm teaching my last hour lesson? And I'd love to have you sit through, if you wouldn't mind, like watch me teach for the last hour, and then I have a few things that some of my colleagues and I would like to meet with you about. And I have found when I was a full-time practicing classroom teacher and I invited elected officials into my classroom, the conversation changed very quickly. When they saw the lessons I was doing, or when they saw me teaching with students, or when they were the guest speaker and I'd have to intervene because they weren't quite sure how to keep a class focused. Like the conversation changed very quickly when they were in our world. So one of the things I would recommend too is maybe the more often you get them out of Lansing and get them into Detroit, that then you're going to start having real conversations about real live students, because they will not be nameless and faceless students or teachers to those folks anymore. They will be real. So I'd suggest that too.
Hi, my name is Greg Cruey. I'm the president of Local 4906 in McDowell County in West by God, Virginia.
All right, great.
I'm a Title I math interventionist at a K-8 school. We spent 5 or 6 weeks giving the Smarter Balanced Assessment this year. And I was tasked with giving most of the makeups. And I gave individual makeup exams in both math and in reading, with the performance tasks in both of those subjects, to 6 different grades. I don't have an answer for this question that I'm looking for. I'm honestly looking for guidance. As we look at education bills that are probably going to leave high-stakes testing in, I hope not, but it looks as though they may do that. Where do we stand on the opt-out movement?
So today, by a 97-0 vote, the amendment to allow parents to opt out passed in the Senate. And my apologies for sometimes getting up from the podium or looking at my phone, because there's one major issue that's very, very dicey right now, which is on the money, that's being kind of negotiated in the Senate right now. So even with this, you got to be out there, and you got to be out there doing this. So my apologies. I just said to people, just turn the mic off when I go backstage.
No, leave it on.
No. Yeah. I have promised, even though I violate it all the time, that I will not curse south of Philadelphia.
That's right.
I think that this issue, the Senate bill, because what the opt-out movement is about, and our position has been that parents should have a right to opt out.
That's right.
And I know there are several in the civil rights movement who have really kind of pushed back on that very hard, because they want the data system, because without the data system, then you don't also see where kids are struggling according to the test scores, as opposed to according to our instinct. And then you don't have the data to force them to spend money on poor kids. Mm-hmm. Having said that, what you all know is that this has gotten completely out of balance, because data is used as a weapon. It's not used as a tool by many of our higher-ups, and it's used as a weapon.
That's right.
And the Smarter Balance tests and the PARCC tests, and you cannot tell me that this is a rational system when basically education stops in April. We have tests all in April. Remember, it's these same people who used to say, oh no, we can't be on the agrarian system. We should have school year-round. those same people now stop schooling in April to have these tests because the data of the tests is more important than educating children. So the real issue becomes for us, how do we get a new federal bill that throws out No Child Left Behind, throws out the sanctioning of annual yearly progress, which, you know, and puts into place in each state a different sense of what's the measurement system. But more important than the measurement system, what's the system to say, if there are problems, what are you going to do about it? And that's really what we're trying to do, not have, and John Jackson said it perfectly in the session earlier, when he said, okay, the room is really cold, right?
Yeah.
The room's really cold. Okay, what should be the solution? Either turn down the air conditioner, or have some sweaters, or AFT swag, or a blanket. Not, here's a thermometer to tell me one more time that the room is cold. And so what we're trying to do is find a way to change the federal law so it's about what's wrong, and the premium is on how do you fix it, not how do you blame somebody for what's wrong, or keep on taking the temperature again. And so that's why we've been, no pun intended, fixated on changing the federal law to change the template and getting rid of a lot of the stupidity and then trying to rebuild again. Now, it doesn't mean that some states aren't going to be really, really stupid. But if we can actually find ways to build some new accountability or responsibility systems that are very much about lots of different ways of ascertaining where students are and where they need to be, and pushing on states to give us the resources to get that done, and then using each other to say this is a great model, and then going into other states using a great model, we think that that's going to be significant progress.
Cool. Thanks so much for asking, Greg. All right. One more.
All right, good evening. My name is Rajani Galloway. I am a representative, a proud WTU Local 6 member.
Ah, all right.
And I'm also a teacher leader. So I'm here to ask questions about the others. As a librarian, I know counselors, social workers, speech pathologists, we often feel othered by sometimes our other co-workers in education and the system. So I've taken advantage of the Teacher Leader Program, but I wanted to know what other strategic initiatives AFT is thinking about to ensure that librarians, counselors, social workers feel a part of the union and have their voice matter.
Oh, I think that question is wonderful. It's wonderful. So I actually think there is a role in this work for our national union. There's a role for our state union. There's a role for our locals. And we actually all have to work in concert. And sometimes that work's going to overlap, and sometimes it's actually going to be on its own. So, and I say that because we have gotten to such a crisis point with our enrichment members. Right, like our nurses, our counselors, our social workers, our art teachers, our music teachers. We have spent the last decade, if not longer in some places, just cutting and cutting and cutting. And so there is a lot that has to get, like a lot of energy that has to go back into building and building and building. And so part of that's gonna take resources, right? Because, you know, part of what caused this problem was that as we were starved as school districts, we experienced a sort of education financial hypothermia. So for those of you who are familiar with what, I'm from Minnesota, so I'm familiar with what happens in hypothermia because you're taught really young. So what happens when you start getting hypothermic? Your body actually starts making decisions about what's expendable and what is critical. right? So at first you start losing your fingers and your toes, and then maybe it's your hands and your feet, right? Because it's protecting the most critical organs you have to keep you alive. Financial hypothermia is the same thing, right? It is a system that is deciding what keeps public education alive until we have the chance to resuscitate it. And so we need to, as we've seen, our systems start to contract, and they start making these life-altering decisions, just like hypothermia, right? Of deciding that our students no longer need music as much as they need that second reading class, or they no longer need physical education as much as they need to stretch math class or recess and those things. So one is a resource question, and that's where, as a national, a state, and a local, we can all fight for more resources, and we can make that case that our students deserve these things, and we make that case, to Loretta's point, in community by working elbow to elbow on the sort of schools our children deserve, quite frankly. The second is re-educating people, because in some communities, we've now had entire graduates of kids who have gone through school without a librarian. We've had entire, graduates go through school without a music class. So we now have folks who are becoming teachers who don't even think they can be a music teacher because they've never really seen a music teacher, for example. And then we have folks who are becoming parents who, I never had music in school. So there's actually a re-education component. And I bring that up because one of the roles we're playing as a national is we're actually working with other national organizations like the librarians, like the School Counselors Association, like the School Nurses Association, to make sure that they see us educating federal officials as a team. And they see us educating other national community groups as a team, because we are going to have to remind people of what that looks like. And so there is a role for our local, our states, and our national to do that education as well. So I think it is a resource piece. And then we've got to have each other's backs. Right? I mean, this is also where it comes you certainly tell us how we need to have your back when it's, whether we're paratrooping into your local to do something or whatever. But, when there's a cut being made and it's the physical education teacher, are we avoiding eye contact in the staff meeting where that gets announced? Or are we all standing up and walking out as soon as we hear the news, right? And there are some things that need to happen and to Shannon's point earlier, how do we build up for that solidarity moment? Because it's not always that spontaneous, right? And so I would say, if we can support you in building up those solidarity moments so that at your local, we have your back by making sure that we've all had conversations in your local about how you have each other's back. I think that's something we would be over the moon and thrilled to be able to do with you. Yeah, thanks so much.
Why don't we hold until we start the second section?
Yeah.
And with Loretta, and but we will get back, I promise. Loretta.